All right, 3 words. Baby freaking goat. Let's do this.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this special live edition of Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Daryl Dappers will be joining me in just a few minutes, but Hank Brown named Auburn's next starting quarterback against New Mexico. Here's what we know. I mean, it was reported that he was splitting reps throughout this week with Peyton Thorne, and it sounds like once his coaching staff gave him a chance to truly compete with Peyton Thorne, he excelled in every step of the way when it came to answering the coach's questions in regards to what to look for in certain plays and in certain situations, as well as actually implementing it on the field. They met with them last night. It sounds like it was when everybody agrees on one thing. What is that?
He's the baby goat.
Nope, that's not what that word means. Unanimous. When everybody, it was unanimous across the offensive coaching staff there. So honestly, that's super, super exciting. And that's also the word that Hugh Freeze used when he explained why he said, hey, he's going to be the star, the QB2 in the entire situation there as well. So Daryl Dappers are going to bring him in as well. Daryl, when I heard the news, I'm on a fishing trip with my buddy Ryan, his bachelor party. I get inside the boat, pull out my phone. I've got 62 text messages after Hank Brown was named starter. And my instant reaction was, oh, okay, cool. I thought this would have happened yesterday when they were going to do it. And it did internally, but I thought the news would break yesterday, Daryl. But your initial thoughts when you saw the report surface that Hank Brown is going to start for Auburn on Saturday against New Mexico.
I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. My initial thoughts were, I thought of you. Initially, and what that meant for you, and I knew you'd be pretty excited about that, as you believed in him a lot early on in the process. But then it just got to a point where I really felt like I respect the decision. I mean, it's not a decision that was made in haste, and I think that there was a lot of thought that went into this, and honestly, I was a little bit surprised. I'd be lying to you if I did not say I was surprised that it went down this way.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulties. I wasn't able to hear everything that you said there, but yeah, I mean, I think everybody's excited about this news, Daryl, and I mean, regardless of what he does tomorrow, regardless of what he does on Saturday, I think it's ignited some energy throughout the fan base. I don't think there's any question about that.
No, the hope and the enthusiasm that it brings is incredibly important. It has fired up the fan base. And I think what it does is it signifies maybe a new chapter, a new start, a new era. And with that comes good feelings. It's definitely, it washes away some of what happened, in my opinion, from last Saturday, because it does spark optimism.
Right. Getting comments about the bucket hat, Daryl, which was, of course, made, designed, and created by the Daryl Dappers. But what a clean hat. No question about it. And I thought for the fishing trip, what better to wear than that? So, I mean, we can talk about like the timing and the impact, and we will. But to me, Daryl, the biggest surprise in all this is Hugh Freeze actually did it. I mean, he had like the stones to make this move. This isn't an easy move to make. This is a guy who, whether Auburn fans like it or not, Hugh Freeze has linked himself to Peyton Thorne, at least so we thought, indefinitely until Peyton Thorne's time at Auburn ended. And clearly that's not the case anymore with this decision.
No, it's not the case. I mean, for a recap perspective, he went out and got Peyton Thorne in the portal. As we all know, he handpicked him.
Right.
A lot of people feel like he stuck with him longer, and I kept using the phrase hitched his wagon to him last week.
Yeah.
But then you shared a story with me privately last week that had me rethinking this whole concept, where Hank Brown was ready to commit to Liberty and Hugh Freeze was moving on to Auburn, and they kept the open lines of communication. And Hugh Freeze believed that he could play at a Power 5 school.
Yeah, right.
Right, and said pump the brakes. Well, and then he follows Hugh Freeze to a Power 5 school. I started thinking that maybe there's a connection there and a link there almost just as much as Hugh Freeze and Peyton Thorne as
Good
Hugh
point.
Freeze and Hank Brown. And look, let's just be honest. What is the decider? What was it that changed the narrative? Hugh Freeze, we can talk about practice. I don't know. I wasn't at the practice, but I think that the film study.
Yeah, I could tell you exactly what it was if you want me to.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, earlier this week, it's the meetings that Hugh Freeze discussed Monday at the presser, where he said, hey, after this, at some point today on Monday, he was going to meet with Hank one-on-one and with Peyton one-on-one. And it was it was those 15 plays on tape. And he said, hey, I want you guys to break this stuff down for me. And it sounds like the way Hank did that paired with what he did at practice the following day was what won it. It's what won it, supposedly. And it sounds like the rest of the offensive coaching staff agreed. And to me, I think that's really what set this whole thing apart, which leads me to ask a few questions. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. Does that mean Peyton bombed that? Does that mean Peyton wasn't able to do that? Or were they looking for an excuse or a reason to give Hank a shot and he took advantage of it? Or both? Your favorite thing to say, two things can be true at once. It could be both of those things too. But I mean, you hearing that, what's your reaction to that?
I don't know how all of a sudden Peyton could have fell off that far. I think it had to be more of a gaining ground by Hank Brown than Peyton Thorne falling off the face of the earth on that. I can't even see what that says, but that's okay. Baby go. There we go. You better get a cut on that too when this starts to take off and go freaking viral, and ESPN's calling him that. We'll remember where it originated.
No, that's all Hank. That's all Hank.
I think that Peyton probably there were some things that were looked at on the film that Hank Brown probably rose to the occasion on. I think it was more of what Hank did do in this week than it was what Peyton Thorne didn't do.
Yeah. And once again, like, Hugh Freeze issues the challenge, says this is what we want you to do, and then he excels and he wins the job. And this is going into week 3 of the football season, and just pivot at that point. That's a big move by Freeze. I mean, we talked about this all week, and I knew there was a chance that this switch would happen, and there was some buzz, but I'm just still a little surprised that it actually did happen, Daryl, just because it's such a big deal.
Well, what changed to me is, I think when we look back on it and people want to say, well, what's the the opportunity that Hank Brown was given finally this week is what changed the whole narrative. I believe that for the first time in this whole quarterback saga, Hank Brown was given a fair shot and was given a real opportunity to win the job. I don't care about what was said and coach speak up to this point. He wasn't. This week was the first time logistically and realistically he was given a shot to win this job. And it goes back to what you just said as far as part 2 of that scenario. Were they looking for a reason? Yes. After watching those 15 plays on film, Hugh Freeze was looking for a reason, and Hank Brown grasped that opportunity. He sieged it.
Yeah, and there were different I talked to a bunch of different people within the program as far as like how the coaching staff responded responded to exactly what he did against Cal, the performance against Cal, and it was kind of mixed. And I didn't really know if that was going to be enough to do it. I think we all agreed that it should be enough to do it. But I'm just surprised. I mean, how many times have we had this conversation where it's like, is it time for Thorne to be done or not? And I don't think any of us thought like that it was a realistic option. However, like, the Auburn fan base has always loved backup quarterbacks, but this one seems a little bit more warranted than it has in the past, because you had that guy who showed so much promise as QB2. But I mean, this is like clearly Hugh Freeze, like when he got Peyton Thorne, this is the side of it that I want to make sure everybody's the other side of this. Did I go out for a second?
You did.
Okay. So there's two sides of this coin, right? One is that Hank Brown won the job and everybody's excited about that. It's reinvigorated the program. Here we go. Can't wait for New Mexico. The other side of this is Peyton lost it. And this is a guy that Hugh Freeze promised a lot of potential, a lot of upside. Hey, you come be my first quarterback and we're going to build this together. And now he had to go back on that because he didn't perform. And I can't imagine how tough that conversation was. I can't imagine it, both for Freeze and for Thorne, because like, this is it for Thorne, right? Like, he's out of eligibility after this year. So I just want people to be aware of that when we're having this conversation.
Well, there is another side of this, and I'm glad you mentioned it. And as excited as everyone is, and the hope and the reinvigoration, like you said, there is a missed evaluation. There is a point where Hugh Freeze went out and thought Peyton Thorne was his quarterback.
Sure.
And he wasn't. And I don't want to put a damper on this, because this is supposed to be a very positive, optimistic day for for what happened, what was announced. But at the end of the day, I do feel bad for Peyton Thorne. And I do feel bad for a certain extent that Hugh Freeze linked or hitched his wagon and misevaluated. He was not and did not get the kind of quarterback play that he thought he was going to get from Peyton Thorne. And to a certain extent, that's on Hugh Freeze, and it's his responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. But that doesn't make it easier. That doesn't make the conversation easier and the relationship easier. It's going to impact some things. Let me ask you this, Daryl. Let's say Hank does what he's supposed to do, and Auburn is up several scores in the fourth quarter, and it's time to put backups in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you put Thorne in?
No.
You put Holden or Walker in?
Yeah, I don't think that if this game goes the way it should go tomorrow, and Auburn scores a lot of points, and I'm thinking earlier than the fourth quarter, but I think you might want to stay with Hank Brown longer than you normally would, a starter, because for reps, you go to hold. You don't. That's a very disrespectful, almost embarrassing thing to put for Peyton Thorne from a pride standpoint, to put him in garbage time after he was a starter. You just skip over him altogether. You go to Holden and you go to Walker White, who need the reps more. There's nothing to gain from putting Peyton Thorne in a blowout where you're up big time. You've already seen that movie before. So I would not. Absolutely not. He's better off just observing from the sideline.
Which is a little wild to me. Like, that's a little wild to me that this is a guy that you rode with for the entire game last week, at turnover after turnover after turnover, to like him potentially not getting a shot at all. Like, that's pretty interesting. Another thing, like, we talked about what the divide would look like between Thorne and Brown on Saturday, but with them naming Brown the starter, like, I don't think you could do that anymore. Like, I think it's Hank's offense at this point, right? If you roll with Thorne, you can take him out a few drives in and kind of rotate him if you want to. I don't think you can do that now.
I hope, and I'm not saying it is, but my goodness, I hope this isn't window dressing or lip service and Brown's the starter and named the starter and jogs out there and takes the first series as the starter. And then series 2, we start playing musical quarterbacks and Thorne goes in. Because technically, Brown would be the starter,
right?
That is the worst case. Because technically, under that scenario, Brown would be the starter, and you would appease some folks. Oh, he started Hank Brown. But yet, series 2, here comes Peyton Thorne, trots out there, and you start rotating quarterbacks. I will jump from the press box if that happens. That's the worst possible thing that could happen Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know like what that accomplishes. Like if you either think there needs to be a change and you're going to start him or not. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I 100% agree with that. As far as as far as just like expectations for Hank tomorrow, like I don't know if this is fair or not, but I think they're somewhat high. Like I think
I think
he's got to go execute now.
There is a tremendous amount of pressure right now on Hank Brown, unfortunately, to look like the savior in this scenario, because it's what everybody wanted and it's what everybody gets. And that with that comes an inherent pressure to perform. So that's why I think the game plan might be a little bit different as far as letting him get his feet wet with the run game. And then, he comes out and starts to play off that from a passing standpoint. That's the only unfair aspect of all this, is that I hope the expectations are tempered and fans understand we're talking about a redshirt freshman, and don't try to hype this up too much. It's exciting, but too much is just be realistic in your expectations for this young man.
Yes, and we are going to critique and hold Hank to a different standard than Peyton Thorne, because he is a redshirt freshman. This is a guy who is playing his first ever start. He's played in 2 college football games ever, and 1 was a bowl game. Peyton Thorne, because I already can hear it like, oh, if Hank messes up, it's like, well, y'all would talk about Peyton in a different way. Like I can already hear that coming. And like that is true. Like we are going to talk about Hank differently than we are Peyton, because Peyton's been playing college football for like as long as Hank has been alive. Like there's a
look
big
at the career starts. Look at the career starts at Michigan State and at Auburn combined. Absolutely, there's a different criteria that both of them should be judged on. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, if he goes 20 of 23 for 3 bills tomorrow, I don't want to hear unrealistic hype that, oh my gosh, if this change would have been made last year, or we beat Cat. We need to just keep middle ground, not too high, not too low tomorrow, because there's a distinct possibility, which watching New Mexico's defense, that Hank Brown could absolutely go off tomorrow. Absolutely go off. Sure. And when that happens, yes, that's exciting, and we should applaud it, and we should absolutely celebrate it. But we also need to keep it in perspective and understand that the next week and then the next week after that is where truly we're going to start to get – it's step 1. Tomorrow is step 1. Again, because there's a very good possibility he could look like he belongs at a whole nother level. But again, we need to remember who he's playing. But that's what I want. Yeah. That's what I hope.
Right.
But let's temper expectations on that as well and not have revisionist history on that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Questions, comments, drop them in the live chat. Excited to see what you guys ask or say. Jared, look at this fish that we caught. Check it out.
Wow. That's impressive.
What are your thoughts? I think I'm going to tweet this out anytime I hear that we're about to get a recruit. I think
that's a great thing to do. Yeah, that needs to be the bat signal. Your bat signal. Yes.
That was Ryan, who's getting married. That was his idea. He wanted us to catch a fish solely so we could do that. And I'm like, I think that's great. I think that's a great idea. So there we go. All right. Yeah. So it looks like we got folks that aren't listening. So Farm Data ask why would we hold Hank to a lower standard if he's ahead of PT than he should be held accountable as QB1 for the Tigers? Not what we said. We said that we're going to discuss it differently because the context is different. This is Hank's first start. He's a redshirt freshman. I assume he's 18 or 19 years old. Peyton, when you get a guy through the transfer portal, like Peyton Thorne had 2 years of starting experience already. Like I'm not expecting Hank to have that experience that Peyton brought with him to Auburn. Like that's a pretty clear thing. I don't think that's a crazy. We say a lot of like edgy stuff here on this show and stuff that like you may not agree with. I don't know why. Like I don't think that's one of them. I think that's a pretty straightforward observation.
We're not holding him to a lower standard. In fact, I think the expectations may be unrealistic by the fans base going into tomorrow. To be honest with you, I think it's discussed when we grade performances and evaluations.
Yeah.
It'll be a different criteria. And by the way, that might be a really good question for me to ask in the press conference tomorrow. Is there a different criteria or standard you're judging Hank Brown when you look at film tomorrow than you did Peyton Thorne because of experience? So the question will be answered.
The Rao report says, how do you think the wide receivers are reacting to the news? I'm going to guess that the wide receivers probably are fine with it. I was told earlier this week that some wide receivers were vouching for Hank. We'll see if that's entirely true. And like that could have just been in one or two. I don't have the full info on that, but Hank Brown is liked in this locker room. Hank Brown won a lot of the team over in the limited reps that he got over the course in the bowl game, in the Music City Bowl. So I can't imagine the receivers being upset with this, especially with what happened last week.
Didn't a receiver say on the record that he's never had a quarterback have better ball placement than Hank did when he?
Yeah,
when he
who
threw,
was that?
When he threw the ball to him, that it was absolutely.
Was it Malcolm Simmons? Possibly. It was one of the freshmen that said that.
Yeah, that nobody has put the ball on him like Hank Brown has as far as ball placement. And if that's the case on slants and in different kind of routes as far as throwing an accurate ball, they would have to be thrilled. I mean, they would absolutely have to be thrilled. And again, we'll see what that looks like for more than a quarter tomorrow. And but yeah, I think they're probably happy, and especially if that's the kind of the standard thought process in the receiving room is that he throws a really nice ball.
Yeah. An account by the name of Sam's Club. I doubt it's the official Sam's Club account, but they ask, what do you expect with the O-line with Hank starting? So this is going to be fascinating. And I don't know if we really learn the answer tomorrow against New Mexico to this question, but there's two sides of this. One is like Peyton is more mobile than Hank is. The other side of this is like the quarterback doesn't need to be that mobile if you throw the ball on time. Amen. And a big thing when Hugh is coaching quarterbacks, my understanding is, and Hank's talked about it a little bit when he's come on the show, starting quarterback Hank Brown, is when they talk about rules. I've heard other coaches refer to them as checks and other ones refer to them as reads, but Freeze teaches them as rules. So when you go up to run a play, if the defense does this, you do this. If the defense does this, then you do this. It's just reacting. And so like you call one play, but here's how you execute that play based on what the defense does. Hank seems really on top of that. And that's what a big part of the film study was that several people have talked about this week. And I mean, it seems like he processes information very fast. So to me, if you do all of those things that Coach Freeze tells you to do in practice, then translated to the game, we've seen other quarterbacks under Hugh Freeze excel, whether it's at Ole Miss or at Liberty. There's no reason why that can't happen at Auburn. And so like the O-line, asking specifically about the O-line, if you are able to process the rules quickly, then you in theory should be fine. You shouldn't need the O-line to protect you for 4 to 5 seconds every single play.
You don't have to hold pass pro as long because he gets the ball out a lot quicker. I mean, that's just the bottom line, is that he gets the ball out quicker, so the offensive line should look better. And again, sometimes you have to run and scramble because plays break down because you're holding on to the ball too long. That 4th and 2 is a classic example, or I'm sorry, the ball that got intercepted last week is a classic example. If that ball's out in 2 or 3 seconds, Robert Lewis might still be running. The second part of this is what a great year to implement helmet comm, because you really want that and can utilize that with a redshirt freshman when you're in his ear on reads and checkdowns and that kind of stuff. So
Sure.
I think Hank Brown's very smart and can process that on his own, but it's nice to have that tool in the tool belt now when you're throwing him out here for his first start, albeit at home. And that's the other thing. Let's say, because there's some people hypothetically in the chat saying, if Hank Brown goes off tomorrow, who do you start against Arkansas? It's a no-brainer. You start Hank Brown. The first 3 potential collegiate starts of Hank Brown's career being at home tremendously benefits him, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and this probably isn't a conversation worth having, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. Like, what's the reality look like where you don't start Hank against Arkansas?
Well, the reality
really
would be,
right?
Yeah, it would be a disaster where you had to, a Georgia State type scenario last year, where you come out and you don't handle business against a lesser opponent and it's close late, and you have to bring Peyton Thorne in off the bench to rescue you to get a W. And the only way Thorne plays tomorrow, I think, is if through a half or through 3 quarters, Hank Brown struggles and it's a close game and they bring Peyton Thorne in off the bench. He rallies them for a victory. Then Hank Brown doesn't start against Arkansas.
Right.
I don't see that happening because I think the running game
I think
tomorrow is going to go off.
Yeah, I also could see, though, like, Hugh Freeze, like, trying to run the same offense, though. Like, I'm not going to be shocked if they try to air it out tomorrow.
If they come out 5 wide and air it out, I'll love it, because what you're saying then to Hank Brown is, I trust you, and to hand the keys to the Ferrari to you. I'm not going to dumb it down and just make you be conservative and run the ball. Let's go. Let's see what you could do, gunslinger. Let's go 5 wide and throw it all over the yard. Now, you're not as potent without Cam Coleman doing that, and Cam Coleman's probably not going to play tomorrow. So some of that is going to be tapped down a little bit. And again, here's the thing that I'm excited to see. Let's say Jarquez Hunter and Alston and Cobb go, have good games tomorrow. Could you imagine? I said it. The absolute green grass and space the receivers are going to get if you soften up that defense with the run. He'll have a lot of open throwing lanes, Zach. A lot of guys running free in the secondary.
You want to see this fish I just caught?
It's pretty impressive. Yeah. Did you catch that really? Was that you, or did someone else catch that and put it in your hand?
I reeled it in. I reeled it in the second half. I'm not going to lie. On that charter boat, I was sick like the entire time.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It was brutal. My body was not ready for the water. I haven't been that sick in a long time, if you know what I'm saying.
I took Dramamine when I went out on a boat charter fishing expedition in Gulf Shores.
My mom, the last 2 days, she's like, you need to take Dramamine. You need to bring it with you. And I'm like, no, I don't need it. Major error.
I slept a little bit more than I wanted to at some point, but I didn't get sick. So there you go.
Yep. There we go. All right, let's put a bow on this. So Hank Brown named starting quarterback, which is obviously big. So we get to see exactly what that means for Hank. And I just think Hugh Freeze making the move, I'm still surprised that Hugh Freeze did it.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's going to be the part of this narrative that I think slides away a little bit, because so many people are focused on Hank winning the job, but like a head coach making that decision going into the 3rd game of the season, that's a big deal. That is a big, big, big deal. So
I agree. That's the biggest takeaway for me from this, is that he actually pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
I just, the verbiage and the talk and the coach speak early in the week, I didn't think it was going to happen.
Yep.
But it did. And so all credit to Hank Brown and Hugh Freeze for, having the guts to do that. And I don't want to focus on the fact that maybe it was that Thorne's performance was so bad he had no choice. I'm choosing to look the other way and say Brown has come on and has done some things in film studies and in the practices that he left him no choice.
Yep. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe. Really appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Kind of limping through some technical difficulties through parts of that, but we got it going. We got it going for sure. And so, Daryl, thanks for hopping on, my guy. And yeah,
I was ready, man. I was excited. Good deal. Happy day. Looking forward to seeing how this translates tomorrow.
No question about it. Once again, like the video, please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.